Well, our next video, we are in the core piece of the Berlin Heights or Berlin Crossroads battlefield. The high ground that we saw at our last video is in the distance, as you can see from that particular perspective. And the road coming out of Jackson came through this particular area and then hit the crossroads. This is the crossroads right here. Today, it's the intersection of Ohio 124 and Ohio 327. If you head left, you're still following the John Hunt Mortgage Heritage Trail, and you're going to head to Wilkesville, probably a good 9 to 10 miles or so away. We're really close to Buckeye Furnace State Park, as you can see there, evidenced by the sign. And we are here at the core of the battlefield, and this is where the interpretation is. So we have this older sign, or a sign here from the Berlin Crossroads Battlefield Preservation Association, which I think is fairly, I'll say it's defunct to a point. They're not an active organization at this particular point. Their sign's getting faded. Hopefully they'll get it replaced sometime in the future. But this property's been placed on the National Register of Historic Places. And I don't have my book in front of me, or my, let this truck go by. I don't have my details in front of me. Well, I want to say something like 137 acres of this ground is now on the National Register of Historic Places. And the high ground, called Berlin Heights, is back in that direction, heading in that direction there. And so what we have here also is one of the John Hunt Morgan Heritage Trail signs. This is number 18 out of, I think the number is 56 or 57. I always forget that number. And we've got some illustration here. The sign needs a good cleaning and maybe replacement here soon, as the red is turning to pink and whatnot. We got this great illustration that was done by Bev Kirk. And we have a map that says, hey, we are here. So the high ground where the artillery was, where we shot our previous video, is back in this direction. This is Keenan Road. And then where I came up before to shoot the last video, where there's a little side road here, modern side road that comes in here. So we're in the heart of the battlefield. And what Duke would do, and Morgan and Duke, so we have the 1st Brigade here, the 1st Confederate Cavalry Brigade here, the 2nd Brigade's under Adam Rankin Johnson. They leave Jackson by a different route. They go on a different path, and they'll join up south of Wilkesville later on July 17th or July 18th, one of the two. But Benjamin Runkle, who had experience, he was in the 13th Ohio Infantry, also the 44th or 45th Ohio would become the Ohio Mounted Infantry. But Runkle is in Columbus. He's assigned to command the militia that's in Chillicothe. He will arm as many of those men as he possibly can and bring approximately 1,500 of them to Berlin Crossroads. Now, this deployment, you'll see some maps that'll show that Runkle's men are actually deployed like this, which makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever, because there's not really much high ground right here by the crossroads. It makes a lot more sense back in that direction, where there's actually good elevation and good defense. Now, initially, Runkle could have deployed along this particular line, and because there's some movement that does occur during the fight, where Runkle's men will be kind of pushed back towards the heights. And when they did artifact surveys here, 2017, 2016, they found numerous Civil War related small arms ammunition back farther along the heights. Now, a lot of that was pistol caliber, like 32, 36 caliber pistol, which the Ohio militiamen would have not been carrying. They would have been carrying a long arm. I can't even tell you which one it is off the top of my head. Maybe the Austrian, maybe an Enfield, maybe a Springfield. So what makes sense back there doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of what they actually found. The other piece of, I will call it controversy for lack of a better word, is what is claimed to be artillery shells found back in the heights. Now, I've seen one of these artillery balls. It is a solid metal ball, which I think is larger than 2.96 inches. Now, the 2.9 inches becomes very important, because we know that Lawrence, with his section of guns, has two 10-pounder parrots, or 2.9-inch parrots on that high ground. And from what I can remember, the the ball or the shot that's been found here, and there's a few of them, is larger than that. I don't believe that artillery rounds that they found, I don't think they're artillery rounds at all. Now, I know that's going to be probably contradictory to some of the local folks here, and I can certainly understand the pride or the thought of, hey, I found artillery rounds here on the Berlin Heights or Berlin Crossroads battlefield. But again, it's been a few years since I've seen it. I think those round metal balls are larger than 2.9 inch. Now, if somebody would measure those and get back with me on this video, that'd be fantastic. But I think they were larger than that, which makes sense to a point. It makes sense from a perspective of those probably weren't artillery rounds because they're larger than 2.9 inch. We know that Lawrence's guns were 2.9 inch Parrott guns, or also known as 10-pounder Parrott guns. So what was found back there behind me may or may not be actually artillery shells. The Confederates only fired something like 5 to 6 rounds, as confirmed by the first-person accounts that are written about the activity here. Regardless, Morgan's men will deploy as skirmishers, a couple hundred of them, and come in as a strong wave up against Runckel's position, and will push them back further into the heights, which opens up the avenue for Morgan's men to take this road and continue down that road towards Wilkesville. It opens up the avenue for Morgan to keep pushing on. Now, taking all the first-person accounts, Runckel probably delayed Morgan here about 3 hours in total. Morgan's command will show up about noon or so, maybe a little before, a little bit after. Time during the Civil War is very subjective. And they'll fight or skirmish here for a couple of hours. And then Morgan's command had pushed Runckel's men back towards those heights and opened up this avenue to allow Morgan's 1st Brigade under Duke to continue onward. Does this have an impact on the Battle of Buffington Island? It might. And I say it might because probably what has a stronger impact is the fact that Morgan delayed at Chester, Ohio, for several hours instead of pushing on towards the Buffington Island fords. By the time Morgan's men reaches the Buffington Island area in the Portland Bottoms late on July 18th of 1863, it is getting dark, and Morgan has no idea the strength, the number, or the composition of what Union forces are already there in front of them, which winds up being the Marietta militia with some artillery there at the Buffington Island Middle Ford. Okay, saying all that, we also have a couple things here. This used to have, all these used to have lids on them, which is unfortunate, and I'm afraid to leave more brochures here because these no longer have lids on them, and the rain and the weather now is getting to, it's impacting our lovely brochures that we left here, geez, oh Pete, probably back in July? I think it's the last time I dropped brochures here. And these are the Berlin to Buffington driving tour brochures that probably a few of you watching this video actually contributed to as a GoFundMe fundraiser. Mike T in particular was very generous with his donations, but we had a brochure made that describes the 60 miles between Berlin and Buffington with tour stops, most of which are on the John Hunt Morgan Heritage Trail tour, but some of them aren't. Some of them are additional, like number 2 and number 4. Number 4 for sure, which is the Miles Cemetery outside of Rutland, between Langsville and Rutland. But we've got these lovely brochures, and you can download these as a PDF on the Buffington Island website. But we created these lovely brochures. You can also find copies of them at the Jackson, Meigs, and Vinton County various chambers or visitors organizations. They have copies of those as well. So we have, numerous of these made up. And if you're in the area, well, normally you would stop here, but again, these particular brochure holders are not being maintained, and probably the locals are, well, I don't want to judge. Probably local kids are having fun tearing these things up, unfortunately. So I'm not going to leave more because, well, they're not covered. and I'm afraid they'll get damaged, so which is unfortunate. Anyway, a recent addition here too is the significance of the Underground Railroad here at Berlin, or Berlin Heights, or Berlin Crossroads. There were numerous African Americans that lived here at Berlin. As a matter of fact, some sources call Berlin, picking up my brochure, it blew off in the wind. Some sources will call Berlin mostly an African American community during this particular time frame. Here's some of the conductors. Well, Berlin Crossroads is not a very large town, so to have all these names listed here is pretty impressive. I mean, there's only, if there's 100 people that live in Berlin, I'd be surprised, to be blatantly honest with you. And this is, let's see, the Friends of Freedom Society, Ohio Underground Railroad Association helped put this sign in. Local resident Ron Salmons had probably a lot to do with this. I know he was talking about it and getting this done. The Underground Railroad was neither underground nor a railroad, contrary to the series that you might have seen on Amazon Prime, which seems to indicate that the Underground Railroad is actually underground and a railroad. Gotta love how we teach history these days, or don't teach history these days. Anyway, so this area that I'm standing in, where the school is, a little farther north, and particularly several acres on that side of the road, are part of the National Register of Historic Places, and this is the Berlin Heights, or Berlin Crossroads battlefield. You wouldn't know it other than these few markers that are here, but it could be interpreted probably even more in the future. Anyway, signing off on this particular video. Have a great day.